Terrific. Thanks again, Rebecca, this is round two of the roundtable discussion regarding town meeting and preparation. This whole place is buzzing right now. Rebecca's involved pretty significantly with the process of putting together the big document for town meeting. Of course, Beth Cuniff is involved as well. Department heads, it's almost a very exciting part of serving our community, all of the behind the scenes to get ready for this really big deal called town meeting. Now, as I mentioned before, town meeting is literally a legislative body, and it exists for just that one night, just like the State House. There's legislative bodies at the State House. You have the House of Representatives, you have the Senate. Those are legislative bodies. Town meetings are legislative bodies. It's just that we don't get paid to do it, and in terms of we, the citizens that participate at the meeting, but the force of law of the decisions made at that meeting have the same force of law as the general court to some degree in governing ourselves. We don't write legislation, but we make decisions that are official and legally binding. And so that's really important. So this is going to be an even shorter session than roundtable 2. This will probably be about 15 to 18 minutes. And basically what I want to do is I'm going to ask Rebecca some questions as to what a warrant is, how it's created, who writes it, who decides what warrants end up at town meeting. So we'll spend a few minutes on that. And then the second part is I've got my town moderator rules book that I wrote with Rebecca in the last few weeks. I did some research, and I'm going to go over the 5 basic principles as to how to participate at town meeting. I think that's important. Why are we doing this? For people that regularly attend town meeting, this should be a refresher, but more importantly, it also will provide some insights in some interesting new twists in rules and engagements. The second part of this is we hope to, and this is a team effort here for myself and Rebecca and everybody at Town Hall, is to encourage participants who either have never been to a town meeting or have only been to a town meeting infrequently or maybe a long time ago. So we want to give you the information that you need. We want to also give you the confidence in being able to show up at this meeting and make some pretty significant decisions that affect us all. So, all right, without further ado, what is a warrant? What is a meeting warrant, Rebecca? That's my first question. Simple enough.
So a warrant is the agenda for the meeting. It sets the articles that are to be voted on by the townspeople. In addition, it states the time and the date and the place of the town meeting. And the body that is responsible for posting the warrant and approving the warrant is the select board. The select board make the final decision.
So where does the warrant idea come from? I know that one warrant I would think would be the budget. Correct? Or is that not correct?
That's correct.
So that's like, some warrants are like automatic. Like we'll always have a warrant called the budget, because unless we don't have a budget someday, that might happen. I'm joking. What other type of warrants are like almost like standard, like typical that you would see in almost any meeting besides a budget?
So
what else?
Standard articles that you'll find in a warrant are the elected positions. So what positions are open and will be voted on the ballot, which will be the local election, which is held per our bylaw the first Monday in May.
Okay.
You will also find general bylaw, general warrant articles that relate to the operation of government, whether or not we're accepting an easement or a parcel, whether or not we are adopting a specific statute under Massachusetts general law that allows us to invoke certain privileges for certain regulations. You will also find general bylaw amendments. So if there's a bylaw that we have in our general bylaw that we're looking to add or to amend, you'll find that on the warrant, as well as any zoning bylaw changes. So as part of the zoning bylaw, you'll see amendments to the existing zoning or new zoning that will come forward, and those are approved by the planning board. And a recommendation by the planning board is made at town meeting to town meeting. And there are public hearings for those zoning article changes, and those actually for the upcoming warrant are on May 4th here. I mean, excuse me, March 4th here
March
at
4th.
Town Hall.
Okay.
The other standard typical articles you'll find in the warrant are any transfers of money. So if we are looking to allocate a certain number of funds from free cash to a capital project, this typical warrant or this year we'll be seeing an allocation for free cash for some improvements at the Bagnell Elementary School. And then you'll also see transfers to reduce the tax rate. So we typically put an allocation for OPEB, which is other post-employment benefits that we make. That is a reduction of the tax rate that's offset by free cash. So those types of financial related articles will be a part of the warrant. And then lastly, we have citizens petitions. So if a citizen is interested in putting a citizen petition on the warrant, they will then go through the process with the town clerk and they will collect signatures, and those will be placed on the warrant. And then lastly, we have the water and sewer department and their articles, which are voted on as well. And that is more in relation to their retained earnings and their funding sources.
So it's safe to say, first of all, what is the difference between the word warrant and article? Because we use them interchangeably. And again, this part of what we're doing here is this public education is to hopefully educate people that have never been to a town meeting. What is the difference? Are they interchangeable? Are they two different things?
So they're two different things. So I would compare a warrant to an agenda. So the warrant would be the agenda, and the article would be the item on the
Actually,
agenda.
item, I got it. Got it. Okay, great. And lastly, the agenda items known as warrants and even the articles that are associated to them, the ones that we just talked about, maybe except the budget, and generally they're not controversial. Not everything at town meeting requires a lot of discussion or is a controversial or a difficult topic, such as the two we mentioned last week, such as the accessory dwelling unit warrant and the MBTA Communities Act. Would that be a fair assessment generally?
I think it always depends. It
Depends.
depends on the person and it depends on the issue.
Okay, fair enough. Who presents the warrant? I mean, technically I present the warrant to the town meeting, but who comes to Rebecca or the Board of Selectmen and say, other than a citizen's petition, people in government, who presents an idea for a warrant or makes a recommendation? We need to have a decision in our town at town meeting this year to be made on X. Who creates the warrant?
So
The idea behind the warrant.
So the body that creates the warrant and approves the warrant is the select board, but the departments are encouraged to come forward if there are changes that are needed. So the select board would not be, for example, intimately involved with the floodplain administrator bylaw. And so the
Might not even
building-
be aware of
Exactly.
conservation issues or zoning issues.
Exactly. So the building commissioner would come forward and he would propose an amendment to the bylaw due to the daily operation of his department or regulatory changes that are being imposed by the state or the federal government that would require us to change those regulations. So he would be the one to, in that particular example, and what we have before us this year, propose those changes to the select board, and the select board would again have to agree and approve to put those on the warrant.
So it really is a team effort, and this is a compliment to you. I know that you're very close to the action here and you're aware of a lot of issues at different boards and committees. But when I look at the executive committee called the select board, they might not be aware. So they're really relying on the departments and committee heads, and sometimes even citizens that want to promote a citizen's petition to bring to them issues that they might not either be completely aware of or they don't know much about. So it's a system of trust.
Agreed.
Yeah, interesting. Wow. So we won't go into the potential controversial warrants and articles for next year because we've we're gonna do that in two ways. One of them is please watch the previous session, the roundtable part two. It's only 25 minutes. And then the warrant, the town meeting document, the warrant articles will be ready no later than April 14th.
Correct.
So that week of the 14th, the 15th, 16th, or 17th, Rebecca and I will record our third and last roundtable. That will be a little bit longer. That could be 45 minutes to an hour because we're gonna go through the document and some key aspects of it. Okay, so just prepare yourself for that. And for someone that's never been to a meeting, I know this could be controversial, but in your estimate, what type of time commitment are we talking about typically? It's not a 1 hour meeting, we know that, but it's not necessarily a 5 hour meeting. Safe to say around 2 to 3 hours typically, based on your history with us. You've been here 7 years.
So that would depend on yourself. So it depends on the moderator and how quickly the moderator moderates the meeting and brings us through the process and the articles, as well as the discussion that ensues and whether or not there is more elaborate discussion based upon a certain article that's being discussed. So it can vary, but in my experience with Groveland, the town meeting has lasted about, 2.5 hours.
Okay. This year, Rebecca made a suggestion, which I think is amazing and very important. Two big issues that we've talked about, the MBTA Communities Act and also the accessory dwelling units. We're gonna have small presentations in advance so that people can get up to speed. That's why it's important to watch these sessions as well, because you get a little bit more of an insight. If, in addition to that, you have the ability to have attended meetings or at least watch the recorded meetings. So that will be important. The last thing I'll ask, I notice for those of you that have never been to the meeting, you'll see that you'll have a warrant article and it says for and then against. And then a particular committee or board will say, we are for this. In other words, we hope you vote for this. And then there could be someone that might say, we're against it, and here's the reason why. Can you explain a little bit of that process, how that works? Who would write a for or against?
So in prior practice, what has happened is that the select board will make a favorable or unfavorable recommendation for an article.
Favorable, I said for or against, it's favorable, unfavorable, I'm sorry.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then the finance board for all financial related articles will make a favorable or unfavorable recommendation. And again, those are only for finance related articles. And then the planning board is another that will make a favorable or unfavorable recommendation. And that is only in regards to zoning bylaw changes as well as street acceptance. Otherwise, you will not typically see any other boards, commissions, or departments have any input on the articles. You will also note that some of the articles will put articles submitted by so that we can give the voters a little bit more information as to who's submitting that article so that they have any questions they can ask. And usually those individuals are available to speak at the meeting to represent why it is that they put that particular article forward.
Okay, great. I appreciate that. Let's switch gears and wrap this up in a few minutes. I just wanted to go over some basic, and you can chime in. I might even ask you a question. Rebecca and I, we developed a very simple document that I wrote a little brief history of the town. I put in a basic message of welcome, but I also sat down and worked through 5 basic principles on how to participate. So I'm just going to open it up right here. I won't read all of this, but just to give you a little bit of a flavor. The first one, when an article on the meeting's warrant is openly announced, a main motion is made to present it to the public. So typically, a select board member, board or committee member, or department head, or some designated spokesperson who may have sponsored the motion will say, this is the motion. So what happens is I'm going to say, okay, we have a warrant article number 1. It's about this. Do I have a motion? And then someone will speak out and make the motion. Now, motions can be changed by just about anybody on the floor. So this is really, really important, a very critical rule. It's a little bit unusual for some people, but if Sally, who lives down the street from me, after she's heard the motion, says, oh, by the way, I'd like to change it. Could you change before we vote on it, could you change it so that it says this, or in addition to the motion, I want to add some words. If anybody wants to change the motion, that's called making an amendment. There'll be a volunteer that will come to you and give you a pen and paper. I hope we have some clipboards, and you're going to have to write it out, what precisely you want that amendment to sound and read like. It has to be, change the motion to blah, 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 and you got to write it down. Then you're going to have to speak it out loud. So you got to write it out in as good detail and as concise as possible. The citizen that wants to make the amendment, you want to speak it out. Then you're going to walk up, I don't think I can walk over to you, but depending on where you're located, but you're going to have to walk up, bring it to me as a town moderator, and then I'm going to read it out again. Because if we decide to vote on that motion that has been changed by your recommendation that you wrote out, spoke out, hand it over to me, and I speak it out, and then people raise their hands, and enough people raise their hands, and they vote on it with the change, that becomes what we voted for. Okay, so it's a little peculiar. Did I get that right? Does that sound about right? And we've done that. So second thing, any voter wishing to address the meeting must first gain the attention of the town moderator. You want to do that as respectfully as possible. And you typically will have 2 minutes to speak. What I can tell you is that with controversial topics, the way I plan to handle it is that we will give people an opportunity to speak either for or against, either favorably or unfavorably. So let's say there's a whole line of people that want to say something about the MBTA Communities Act. One of the reasons why we want to do a little bit of education here through the series by having the documents out early, about 10 days before the 10 to 12 days before the meeting, and also by having a presentation by experts that know it, is to reduce the need for many, many people to speak on it. But I probably will reach a point, especially this year, where I'm going to say, okay, before you speak, we've heard from 15 other people. Unless you have something really new or unique that we haven't heard from anybody else, we need to, quote unquote, move the question. That means we need to, let's get to a vote. Because if we have 15, 20, 30 people that want to speak about the accessory dwelling units and the MBTA, it's going to be a very, very long meeting. And then the meeting, it's not just the length that's the problem, it becomes unproductive. And then it's going to be really hard for, when we get to 10 o'clock at night or beyond, for us as a group of people to work towards the rest of the business that's on for that evening. So remember that. I'm going to basically tell people, please keep it at 2 minutes or less. And then I'm going to probably get to a point where there isn't an open legal right that people have, no matter how many people are in line, that they have a right to speak about something. They do have a general right to speak about something, but they are going to have to speak about it in a way that's different to be given airtime. Once I notice that there's a lot of time, an unusual amount of time that's committed to the topic. Again, I don't expect that with all the articles, but on 2 of them for sure, MBTA and accessory dwelling unit, I think people are probably opinionated about it. And we're going to have to keep the emotions down, because it's an emotion. Those are emotional topics. There's no sugarcoating this. Those are difficult and emotional topics for people. I know there are people that are upset about those, whether they're for or against. People are very passionate. So remember that. I'm going to give everybody 2 minutes, but not everybody per se, unless you can add something new. The third item. Where's number 3? Oh, right here. Any person who speaks for or against an issue and removes an article by motion or amendment and has a financial or economic commitment to it, you need to disclose that. So if there's a particular issue, a warrant article this year that could affect you economically or financially, whether it's a gain or a loss, well, specifically a gain, that needs to be disclosed openly. And again, I might not know that. You might live in part of town where it would be, I don't know, I'm just making this up conceptually, financially beneficial to you to have this particular warrant pass. So you'd want to, you really are compelled legally to say, by the way, I can financially benefit from the passage of this directly because of my location or my circumstance. Number 4, and then this 5, and then we'll wrap it up. When amendments are presented, the town moderator retains discretion to rule to allow it to pass, sometimes by consulting with interested board, committee members, or town council who is present at the meeting. So I might be in a position where I need clarification on a motion or a particular rule that would apply. So I might say, excuse me, folks, I'm going to consult with, and sometimes it's done openly, and sometimes I may have to do a sidebar with the attorney. That's rare, but that could happen, correct? Where I would have to ask the attorney for some clarification.
Yes,
I
you're
could do that.
able to ask the attorney for clarification.
And I can do
correct.
that openly.
It would be an open
It
session,
would,
yes.
there would not be an incident where I would have to take them aside privately.
Correct.
Okay, all right. I just want to, I got that wrong. So if I have a question to a board member, or a committee member, or Rebecca, or someone that is not an official participant in the meeting, such as the building inspector, I guarantee you, I'm probably going to ask the building inspector a couple of questions for me to better understand and to help us all better understand a particular aspect of a warrant article that he would be knowledgeable about. He's going to be sitting in a section that is separate from the body of the meeting because he can't vote. He'll be specially designated. But I might say, Mr. Building Inspector, I have a question. And I could also even allow, going through me, someone on the floor, if they go through me, say, you know what, basically, can you ask the building inspector about this? And then I'll ask the building inspector. We want to keep it really formal. People can ask questions to each other, but through the town moderator, if you will. Very similar to what we do with the rules that we use at, theoretically, the formal aspects of the rules we use, like at a select board meeting, we can ask a question through the chair, it's called. So we would say, Kathy, I have a question for so-and-so, through the chair. So that's conceptually what I wanted to share with you. The last thing, votes are taken, as you know, by aye or nay. And let me read this to you. Sometimes we have to have a show of hands. We have to count it because we can't really hear and be sure that there's more ayes than nays. So we'll have to do a hand count. Okay, votes are taken by 2 methods, ayes and nays, or accounted votes, show of hands. The town moderator will declare the vote is complete when results are announced and declare that a motion either passes or fails. The town moderator is empowered to make declaration of 2/3 or 4/5, but the reality is technically there are certain warrants that require a majority, which is most of them. And once in a while, tell me a little bit about what would be an example of an article that would have to be voted in a manner different than just a majority. I guess that's.
It depends on what's being voted on. For example, it could be a zoning bylaw that would require a 2/3 majority instead of a majority vote.
Okay,
So
2/3 majority.
each one would depend on what is being proposed.
So we would have to, so if we had a 2/3 majority and we had 100 people, then it would be how many people? Should I do the math? I should know this, right?
So, but we would have that on the warrant. So
That would be on
every
there.
article on the warrant will say whether or not it's a majority of vote or 2/3 vote, so that
2/3.
everyone's aware.
So we know the percentage, we just have to calculate. We have 111 people.
It depends on who's there,
Yeah,
yes.
2/3 of that is, okay, we need 86 and a half people to make this happen. Okay. did I miss anything for this session? And did we get it done? And
I think you covered a lot of ground there.
okay, great. I really appreciate you again.
Yeah.
I thank you, and you are going into an extraordinarily busy time, so I wish you luck with you and your team,
Thank you.
helping our town be a better place to live. And I know this is a big deal, it's a big process, and you've got a big deadline coming. So we'll wrap this up again in the middle of April, just about a week and a half before the town meeting. So again, please mark your calendars, April 28th, and please attend. Appreciate it. Take care.